there's so much therapy speak on social media. Do you think because of that, more people are self-diagnosing, and then sort of because they're self-diagnosing, they're sort of identifying solely with this thing because it potentially allows them to belong to a community, which is really what all young people want, which is why sort of you've seen sort of the uptick in trans and all these types of things. I don't all think these people want to be dudes or girl, whatever. They want to be part of a group. I know I
Right.
did when I was younger. And when we were younger, it was like cliques. There was wrestling and the nerds and the jocks and the goths. And maybe it's not like that nowadays. It's all these other more serious things that have
Hmm.
actual implications for your life and your identity, that they're solely buying into this thing that, okay, my friend has depression. They say that this person has depression. Okay, I'm depression now and I'm depressed.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the whole reason, but do you think that has a partly to do with why the onset might be younger and why it might be more severe with young people?
1000%.
Dr. Mike, welcome to the show.
Aaron, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm very excited for this chat. And my first and most important question is, how are you doing? Like, actually, for real, how are you doing?
Aaron, I'm doing great. That's an honest answer. I've got, I feel really blessed. I've got incredible family. We've got an awesome business that we're running down in Central Florida and online. But I tell you what, we live in a crazy world. So that's the thing that I'm kind of burdened by every day. As you can imagine, as a psychologist, I've dealt with people for decades now that are struggling with mental health issues, but it's never been like this. I can tell you that right now. We've never seen as much acuity as we see right now in our clinics, especially. So,
Hello, my friend. Before we jump straight into the episode, I would love to share the sponsors of this podcast. And the sponsors of this podcast are all the businesses that I've created that are really part of the ecosystem that run this whole thing. And at the top of that list is Patreon. Patreon is the home of our exclusive community where we do bonus episodes, live streams, Q&As, and merch discounts, and so much more. Patreon is the number one way to support this podcast and to support my mental health nonprofit called You Are Loved. Next, we have my clothing brand called Shop for Everybody. Every hat and every t-shirt you see me wear on every single episode of this podcast is from Shop for Everybody. It's the home of For the Dads, For the Moms, all Something for Everybody merch, and it's the home of all You Are Loved merch. So that's shopforeverybody.com. And the last thing is my sports performance brand called Champions Adjust. Again, if you see anything Champions Adjust related, it's all found at champsadjust.com. It also has its own podcast. We also do a sports show through Champions Adjust. And if you're looking for any mindset or mental skills classes, they can all be found at champsadjust.com. And so if you want to stay up to date on everything that we're doing here with all of the businesses that I'm involved in, please go to aaronmashbitz.com and sign up for our weekly newsletter. Thank you. Now, on to the episode, completely uninterrupted and ad-free. Here we go. Yeah, that's how I kind of wanted to kick off the conversation by sort of asking you about like the state of the union in terms of mental health, because you've, been doing it, like you said, for 20 years. So what have you seen change? What have you maybe seen gotten better? And why do you think it's potentially worse now than it ever has been before in terms of our mental health? We see the stats. I talk about
yeah.
young men a lot, 4 times more likely to die by suicide as a young man. We see
Uh-huh.
teenagers are going through a bunch of depression and anxiety. I have some theories, but I'd love to hear you just sort of give a state of the union potentially.
So, when I started in clinical practice in 2004, I think is when I started our clinics down in Florida. Uh, Man, it was not uncommon, right, for people to need help. That's just part of life. Mental health has been on the radar screen for us for millennia, right? That's just part of the human experience. Sometimes people get depressed, they get anxious, struggle in relationships. And we went great guns, as fast as and furious as we could to try to help as many people as we possibly could. But what has happened, I would say, about the last 10 years, but especially since COVID, we've seen this incredible, like crazy uptick in intensity, duration, frequency of severe mental health issues. Whereas before, people might come in mildly depressed or, man, I'm anxious. I'm having panic attacks. That's not uncommon, but people come in now and it's like, I'm not going to work. I'm so anxious. I can't walk in the mall without having a panic attack. And the stats on it are like shocking for me. And this is what I do every day, right? But it's still shocking to me. I look at it and I'm like, how's it possible that 20% of the population of the US at least is on antidepressants? That's a bizarre number to me considering what it was when I started. How is it possible that you have the incidence of teen suicide up by some statistics say 60, 70%? Like, that's not normal. That's not just a blip on the radar screen. We thought, I thought, I think my whole field thought that after COVID, we'd see it kind of die down. Like, okay, now that we're through the mess, we'll all start to feel better. We haven't. We've actually seen the opposite. Things continue to escalate. So we're living in a world where people are just hurting, Aaron, in ways that surprise even the people that do this all day, every day.
Yeah. Do you like let's think about social media, right? It's like there's so much therapy speak on social media. Do you think because of that, more people are self-diagnosing, and then sort of because they're self-diagnosing, they're sort of identifying solely with this thing because it potentially allows them to belong to a community, which is really what all young people want, which is why sort of you've seen sort of the uptick in trans and all these types of things. I don't all think these people want to be dudes or girl, whatever. They want to be part of a group. I know I
Right.
did when I was younger. And when we were younger, it was like cliques. There was wrestling and the nerds and the jocks and the goths. And maybe it's not like that nowadays. It's all these other more serious things that have
Mhm.
actual implications for your life and your identity that they're solely buying into this thing that, okay, my friend has depression. They say that this person has depression. Okay, I'm depression now and I'm depressed.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the whole reason, but do you think that has a partly to do with why the onset might be younger and why it might be more severe with young people?
1000%. Like, I don't think there's any question that social contagion is a part of it. If you think about what's going on in the mind and even the brain of a young person that's 14, 15, 16, 18 years old, like their whole job is to kind of figure out who they are, right? And
Hmm.
when you're bombarded with information about even depression and anxiety, I mean, just the basic sort of mental health zone of depression and anxiety, all they hear is how stressed I am and how anxious I am. It's almost like a badge of honor. The more stressed you are and the more anxious you are, it's almost like maybe you must be important because you've got a lot going on. That's sort of the vibe that I get
Hmm.
from a lot of the kids. And so there is a social contagion to it. And there's also a tremendous amount of noise on social media. The loudest people are the shallowest people. You know, that this kind of a true in general, that statement's just kind of true. It's an old adage that shallow brooks are noisy, right? So you get the noisiest people that don't have real information, the depth of knowledge that they have about it. It's like this thin, maybe their qualification is I was anxious once, so now I'm going to talk about anxiety all the time on social media, and so they don't understand what they're talking about, and they're giving information. In some ways they're evangelizing people for anxiety and depression. Like, this is, if you are a deep person of substance, of course you're going to be anxious and depressed. And I think that's the message that these kids are getting, minute by minute, moment by moment. And by the way, they spend un- incredible amounts of time on social media, like 3,
Uh-huh.
4, 5, 6 hours a day on screens. Just, and a lot of them are just scrolling. They're not even users. They're not even posting. They're literally observing, like in a voyeuristic way, other people's lives and what they're going through. And if you think about anxiety all the time and you are exposed to depression all the time, and that's sort of the sum total of what amounts to your virtual peer group, guess what? You're going to get anxious and depressed. That's just life. When I was a
Yeah.
kid, guess how many people I talked to who sat around and posted on the internet that they were anxious and depressed? None, because there was no internet. But besides that, you didn't talk like that, right? You were out playing a sport. You were out. I grew up on a citrus farm in North Merritt Island, Florida, man. I was in like the middle of 1,000 acres of orange groves. There was no one around. So guess what I did? Shot guns at things. I rode a motorcycle around. I was outside. I was swimming all the time. We were at the beach. Like, that's the life I lived. I was active. I was moving. And that yields health. But when you're sitting looking at screens, exposed to information all day, every day, you start to just become the people that you're metaphorically hanging around.
Yeah. Now this is interesting to me because I play sports my whole life, Dr. Mike. Everything I think about is through a sports lens. So
Right.
sorry if all of my metaphors or analogies are through sports, but I still coach sports now. And so I'm usually around older kids, 17, 18 baseball players. And so what I see from them is totally different than what I hear and read about from, like, let's say, quote unquote, an average kid who doesn't play a sport. And so there's such a difference between someone that is like committed to something with a group, with friends,
Hmm.
with a community, doing something that they care about and that they have a passion for. Now, you can get into some of the other maybe darker sides of pursuing sport. We'll leave that to the side. I think that's less evil than what maybe we're talking about here. And so you can see the sort of the stark difference just of anything. This doesn't have to be a sport, but something that you can sink your teeth into that makes you get outside and do things and have a community, a religious group, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, sports, all this. And you see less and less and less and less of that because most people think they can just get their community again through the screen, which is like it's not possible. It's not. I mean, we can even get on sort of the porn subject of young men and how AI girlfriends are like. There's so many different complicated subjects. I mean, I have a Dr. Mike. I have a 2-month-old son at the time of this recording, and I can't even imagine what his life is going to be like and what we're going to have to navigate when he's just fucking like 8 years old or something, dude. That's crazy.
Aaron, it's
Sorry to go on
nuts,
a
man.
tangent there.
No, you're right, and I think what you're picking up on reflects sort of the sickness of our culture right now, because we are sort of leaning in to all this technology, and that kids are on screens. Even when they're at school, they're typing on computers, like their whole life is two-dimensional. But if you look at cultures that value movement, like inertia, like get your body moving, those cultures are healthier. I think Norway, if I'm not mistaken, is the happiest place on earth. Have you read this? So they've studied
I
all the
haven't.
countries on earth, and I think Norway is the happiest country on earth. You know, one thing that defines uh, that culture: kids are expected to play sports.
Hmm.
Isn't that wild? And they don't, the way we're situated now, like my sons were basketball players. You had to work your butt off. I'm talking your butt off to even make a high school team. And you can't just like say, I'm in 10th grade. I think I want to try basketball this year or baseball. It's like impossible. Like you can't play. You might play, on your Xbox, but that's about it. We have a group of people that are just all in, and they, like you said, there's some good parts and bad parts of that, but these other countries that are actually happy, they have different ways of engaging kids in sports that allows them to be in a position where everybody has a chance to get their body moving. And I think when we move and we exercise inertia, we begin to feel better. There's some data to support that, by the way, Aaron. Do you know that people that exercise consistently as a treatment for depression, that treatment is as effective or more effective than medicine to treat the symptom of depression and anxiety?
Mm.
Think about that for a minute. 20% of our population is on an antidepressant, and exercise, moving your body every day, is as effective or more effective than the treatment of medicine. Why in the world are we content to just pass out pills to people to help them feel better without encouraging these healthy things that ultimately will allow people to get engaged in life, man? Because that's the opposite of depression and anxiety, right? When you're out running on the beach or when you're out, playing tennis, you're living right here, right now. Like, I'm going to do everything I can to get this serve in play, right?
Mhm.
That it's a present mindful moment. Anxiety lives in the future. Oh my gosh, what if? What if this happens? What if this girl rejects me? Or what if I don't get the job? Depression lives in the past. I wish I hadn't have done that. I have all these regrets about why I didn't. When I was in that situation, I should have said this, or that person rejected me. Man, we've got to get to a point culturally where we begin to live right here, right now, and do things that we're created to do.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, we have a saying on my baseball team. We say "win," which means what's important now.
Yeah.
Because everything is expressed in the present moment. And that's
Uh-huh.
why I think youth sports are so important. Because what Norway's done, if I can remember, is like they they build a relationship with the sport, and they do give out participation trophies. But in America, we think that's so wrong. And I think participation trophies are wrong up into a certain age. But when I'm 6, 7, 8, 9, and maybe even 10 years old, the
Mhm.
whole point of youth sport is to build a relationship with my body, with my teammates, and being outside. Now, as you get a little bit older, of course, we have to teach kids about winning and losing, and you don't always get things that you want. Right. All that is good. But they've played the sport for 3 or 4 years at that point, been outside with their friends. Now they can understand, okay, this kid's a little bit better than me here. If I win here, I
Yeah.
do this. If I earn this, I get this. And then if they want to continue playing to 11, 12, 13, yeah, then we get a little more serious. And then we want to
Mhm.
play in high school, then we get a little more serious. But they've been playing so long that they actually have a joy and a love for it. And so when my son falls in love with whatever sport he falls in love with, he's gonna want to come up to me and say, "Dad, can we go out and play?" I'm be like, "Fucking right, dude. I don't got to force you to do it. Let's go, baby. I'm
Y
ready. Whatever it
That's
is."
right.
Right. And he,
That's right.
and he can have a ton of interests, just like I did. I mean, baseball, professional wrestling, all sorts of things. And hopefully, he might be forced to have a few of those same ones, just so I have a wrestling buddy. But like that's the whole point. And so it's okay to reward people for just showing up. But we have such an aversion to that in America because everything has to be about winning and results. And I think that's important. I think winning and results are important because you don't get the right result, you don't get the job, you don't get whatever. But there has to be the foundational level that has to be built up to that point that actually you enjoy doing the thing and you want to fucking try hard and go out and win. That's sick,
Yep.
but you also understand that you're not really competing against someone else. You're just trying to be the best version of you. And so you can shake hands and high five with your opponent after the deal because you know that they're trying to do the same thing. That's the whole point of a participation trophy. But those who say we shouldn't do it are those who've never played competitive sports, those who've never tried hard at anything. Like, we should never do it. It's worse. It's like, well, what we're doing now is not good for the kids either, because youth sports are now $1 billion industry. They've been taken over by money and all this sort of shit. And all kids are quitting by the age of 12. And I don't think that's good for the fabric of society. And now I'm just going on a rant here, Dr. Mike, because I get real passionate about this,
Hey,
but you get my point.
hey, I do. I'm gonna tell you this. This is a great story. I think it fits perfectly. I I coached my sons basketball all the way through middle school. When they got to middle school, I didn't really know what I was doing as a coach anyways, Aaron. When you're teaching like Pee Wee, you're just out there with the kids. So when they got to middle school, they had to have real coaches. But when they were in first grade, second grade, fifth grade, you got this short white dude, right, who's the coach every season, and I was always in it. And I never minded participation trophies. But the way I did it is I didn't just have the kids get in a room and let's say we just sucked one year, which happened a good bit. We won some too, so that's cool. But we had some years where we just didn't win. And I did not get them in the room and say, "Okay, guys, you are the most incredible basketball players that this league has ever seen. I know we won like two out of the whole season, but we got robbed and you guys deserve this trophy because you're amazing." That's not what I did. What I did
Right.
is I said, "Look, I've got something for every one of you." But before that little party or whatever we would have, I would think about every kid and I'd say, "Okay, what can I identify in this kid that he brought to this team that made
Man.
us better?" So, one kid would be like, kid couldn't, I mean, maybe he couldn't like hit the rim. Maybe he couldn't hit the backboard with a basketball, but he tried harder than anybody else. Well, he was going to get the hustle award. Like you went out there, you gave it everything you've got, Johnny. And because of that, you're getting reinforced for that. Like you're the man.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
sucked, but you're the man because your effort was there. And I would give an MVP too every time. And some people would complain about that. And forth, and you shouldn't do that, and it's not good for these kids to feel like one kid's better. For me, I was like, no, this kid, hey, he worked harder than anybody else on this team. That's why he scored more points than anybody else. He was the best defender because he worked harder than anybody. He practiced. I saw him shooting free throws after practice. And when we reinforce effort and process, and we can allow ourselves to surrender outcomes, that's when athletics become a very, very formative thing for kids. It teaches grit, it teaches determination, it teaches fortitude. In some ways, for me with my boys, man, I felt like it was teaching them how to be a man. Like, here's how you
Mhm.
go out and compete and try hard and let your best effort be enough. So I'm with you
Yeah.
on that, Aaron.
Yes, you're 100% right. All right, let's circle back to depression. You mentioned that a few times, and I've been thinking about this quite a bit in terms of depression. I think people miss like the actual sort of clinical diagnosis of depression, and they sort of lump it in with my life just sucks.
Mhm.
And I personally think those aren't the same thing. What do you think?
I think that the surest way to be depressed is to try really, really hard to not be depressed. Like, think about that for a minute. Like, it's the people that just get obsessed with my life is messed up and what do I need to do to make it better? And maybe if I hadn't have done that and if I could improve this part of myself, then maybe I'll feel better. And all that rumination and all that compulsing about our life, it does yield a miserable existence because we're never enough. But that experience of feeling sad and disappointed, that's called life. That, and we are in control of that many times. Like, the decisions we make and the choices we make will yield either a sense of well-being and happiness, or it can yield this sense of disappointment. Man, that does kind of suck. I got an F, on this test, or I'm 25 and I thought I met my partner and the girl of my dreams, but she dumped me. Well, that's called life. Those experiences are very different than clinical depression.
Mm,
Clinical depression is uh, I'm not sleeping well. I'm not eating well. I don't enjoy things the way I used to. I have low energy. My motivation's off. My concentration's off. Low self-esteem, excessive guilt, hopelessness about the future. Sometimes that turns into suicidal ideation. That's clinical depression. And I think we just mix that up culturally. We feel like we're so entitled to this perfect life that doesn't have any issues, that when we deal with the natural setbacks and issues of life that are in some ways connected to our lack of effort, we're dealing with what I call just a sad moment, a sad season, but that's not depression. So I think you're right on that. We're over diagnosing it culturally. And I
yeah.
think the younger someone is, the more likely they are to do it. If you talk to an average 15-year-old, they all think they're depressed.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I was 15, life's hard. When you're a young person, you're
Uh-huh.
going through a bunch of different stuff. Your body's changing. Do you have friends? Do you fit in with this group or that group? Everyone's asking if you're like when you're around 15, 16, are you going to go to college? At least when I was younger, like, what are you going to do with your life? I'm like, I'm going to be a fucking WWE superstar, mate. That's what I'm going to be. Okay. So I got it figured out, but most people at 15 don't know what they're going to do with their whole life. I did.
Yeah.
And I told
Yeah.
everyone about it. But like, I think that's an important distinction that we need to make between like, depression and like your life not being very good. Like, and that's okay. Like
Mhm.
I talk to a lot of young men, and like if a young man doesn't have any dating prospects, he has no close relationships, he's not making very much money, and he still lives at home potentially, though that's a recipe for life not being the way you want it to be. And that can make
Yeah.
you feel very sad and inadequate and not worthy. And those are really, really hard things to deal with. But that is not necessarily depression. That is things that you can fix, but you got to fix them one at a time, very
Yep.
small steps to
Yeah.
build like, okay, what do I need to do to like maybe be attractive to a female? Okay, I probably need a fucking shower and maybe need to start going to the gym. And like those are steps that you can take. Now, for those that I've seen experience like real serious depression, sometimes it's not linked to anything. Sometimes it is what it is. I mean, and I might be wrong on that, but when I watched my sister go through it, like life from the outside seemed
Yeah.
great. She was an engineer. She had a boyfriend, but like she was still clinically depressed because she had
Uh-huh.
something very different than her life not being very good. Maybe I don't know if I explained that well, but that's my take.
No, I think you're onto something there, Aaron. And part of part of the dynamic I think culturally is we're so goal oriented. We're so outcome focused. It's if I can have this job or this house or this girl or this guy or this wife or this life, then I'll feel okay. And so we begin to define ourselves in terms of goals. And anytime we begin to focus on outcomes, we're only as good as our last win or our last loss. That's a miserable way to go through life, right? The metaphor I use is marathon running. If I say, I'm going to run a marathon, my whole life becomes about this goal. And that I'm not saying that's bad, but I am saying that if I could start with a value system about health. So for me, it would be I want to be a healthy, energetic, um, able bodied 75-year-old dude who's able to play around and throw a football with his grandkids in the yard. Like that's my goal. And then, or sorry, that's my value system. And then out of that value system, I have a goal and it might be to run a marathon. That's great. Or it might be to work out 5 times a week. And that's great. Those goals are awesome. We need goals. That's what helps us make progress. That's the actual steps that we need to take to live the life that we want to live. But the goals have to grow naturally out of what our value system really is. And the problem with a lot of us is we don't have a value system apart from outcomes, apart from the goals. We don't have anything that ultimately we stand on that we think defines us as a human being. It's the question of what makes me acceptable and worthwhile and valuable and lovable and significant. What keeps me safe in this world? What defines me? Because until we can answer that question, we're only going to be as good as our last win or loss.
Mm, yeah, that's extremely well put. And so, based on that, like, what if someone wants to develop their value system? Where would you have someone start?
So, man, I think if you want to look at a value system and how to develop something that's meaningful to you, you have to say, okay, let me start body, mind, spirit. Like that's the core of who we are as human beings. And we have to say, when I think about those three domains of my life, what is going to transcend this moment right here, this season that I'm in right here, and what's going to bring me through to the finish line? We have to start thinking forward when we think about value systems. And if we could say, I base my life on I believe for me, I'm gonna tell you what I believe, Aaron. I believe there's a God that's bigger than me that has a plan and purpose for my life. Uh, physically, body, I believe that I have this body I've been given that for me, I need to take care of it and I need to treat it like it's the vessel that's going to help me get my life done in this world in a way that can make me feel proud and like I've done things that are significant. Mind. So you got spirit, body, mind. I'm going to value intellectual curiosity. I'm going to value healthy mental health. I'm going to value approaching people with dignity and with empathy and respect. So I just quickly was able to name 4 or 5, 6 things that are based on what I think is core to my humanity in my body, mind, and spirit. And if we can begin to just have some general principles that sort of define for us are definitive about who we are and what makes us acceptable and worthwhile and significant and valuable, man, that's the reality of a good, healthy value system. And man, when we start living by that value system, it doesn't matter what happens. Like we can have very difficult moments in life. And as long as we feel connected to, you know what, I I can't control the fact that I lost my job or the business went under or I lost the girl. Like those are things that I'll never have control over. But what I can control is my response to it. I
Mm.
can control. Right now, I'm going to go back to my value system and say, there's a plan for my life. I got fired from my job, but I believe there's a plan for my life. I believe that, there's something bigger than I am, that I'm a pawn in a bigger game. So I'm just going to do the next healthy thing. I'm going to go out and love on people, do the best I can to be respectful and honoring of other people. And over time, I'm going to figure out my profession. I'm going to figure out my calling. Like that's what provides that center, that anchor point that allows us to function even in the worst of times. In the worst of times, Aaron. One more story. I know I'm talking a lot, but I think of Viktor Frankl. That guy was the psychologist. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning. It's one of my favorite psychological theorists and writers from the early infancy of psychology. Now, Viktor Frankl was in 4 different concentration camps, I think.
Mhm.
And you talk about psychological operations, man, that was crazy town what was happening to those people, right? You'd come in one day and they would just choose anything to take your dignity. So today, no one has clothes. Like that's the game today. And tomorrow it might be, we keep food from you for a week to see how that it's lack of dignity after lack of dignity after just psychological operations designed to just break people down. So that's the environment Viktor Frankl's living in. And what he determined in his mind, living under that incredible duress. I mean, we think we've got it bad. Think about what that must have been like. He said, I'll never let them take from me the last of the human dignity. And that's my ability to choose how I respond to any situation. Coming in, taking our clothes today, okay, that's awful. So, like it's killing people, awful. But I'm going to choose how I respond to this, and you'll never be able to take that choice away from me. That's the foundation of existential psychology. That's the same model of psychology that people still use today to help people walk out of depression and anxiety. And it can be just an incredible resource for people that want to understand how to find meaning and purpose in their life is you act out of that value system. And that's exactly what he taught. That's exactly what he did. And man, the rest is history. He's changed the world in many ways.
Yeah, absolute legend. The ability to respond and not react is an absolute superpower, and
Mhm.
it's something that every human being can train and learn and develop. And I see it on the baseball field in an instant, right? It's like
Mhm.
you swing at a bad pitch, first pitch, breaking ball in the dirt. How you respond is going to determine what you do in the next pitch. And it's the same exact thing in our life. You're a
Yeah.
student and you made a C on your test when you really wanted to, or needed an A or needed a B or whatever the case may be. Okay, how do you respond there? Well, I am
Yeah.
going to blame the teacher. Teacher sucks. This pencil sucked. This school sucks. I got
Yeah.
distracted. Okay, maybe all of those things might be true. Maybe they are true. But
Mhm.
what's even more powerful is, okay, I'm gonna choose my response, and I'm just gonna do a little extra work here. I'm gonna ask the teacher what extra stuff I can take. Maybe I'd ask a friend who took better notes, and then I'm gonna take responsibility and action on the things that are in my control. And if you continually do that, let's say 90% of your life, man, things are gonna turn out pretty fucking good, I would say.
Mhm. You know why we get stuck in the negative patterns though, Aaron? Because I think what you just described is pretty intuitive on some level. I think on some level we all know that, especially if we have an internal locus of control, like the sense that I can control my destiny. We get stuck in what amounts to fear states. Like our brain begins to get so focused on outcomes and disappointment over outcomes that our brain gets locked in fear threat mode. So take your batter, for instance. If you swing and miss on your first try, if you have a firm belief that my value as a teammate right here, right now is based on an outcome, man, you you suck, right? Like you're letting your team down and that pressure mounts, right? Then there's the second pitch and you let that one go through as a strike. Why didn't I swing at that? Why? That was a perfect, I could have hit that home run. what in the world? What's wrong with me? And that critical voice begins to come. And if we engage that kind of outcome based critical voice for days and weeks and months and years, what it does is it puts our brain in a fear threat. We perceive benign situations as threat, and your brain begins to activate the amygdala. The amygdala is the almond in the back of your brain. It's where fight or flight lives. It's the fear control center of the brain. When the amygdala is activated, the frontal lobe is shut down. The frontal lobe is judgment, reasoning, if then contingencies. If I do this now, this happens later. It's where creativity lives. It's where hope lives. That part of the brain is dormant. And you're thinking with this little squirrel brain in the back of your brain. And that begins to release adrenaline and cortisol that runs through our entire body. Now our heart rate is up. Now our thoughts are coming at us even faster. Those negative thoughts that started the whole cycle seem uncontrollable. And you've got a batter who's ultimately paralyzed in the batter's box because his brain has shifted into what we call trauma mode, right?
Mm,
And until you're out of fight or flight mode, it's almost impossible to execute. We
yeah.
get so caught up in like this negative cycle that we can't even begin to execute what that batter's probably done thousands of times. Thousands of
Hmm.
times. I had a
Yeah.
buddy that played baseball. He was incredible. He was great, but he got in a batter slump. Aaron, he never got out of it. He quit
Yeah.
baseball.
Really.
Yeah, playing pro
Yeah.
ball, quit because his brain just wouldn't let him focus on the process and release the outcomes.
It's, and then like, I think like most parents, no shade on most parents, but don't know the information you just stated, right? And so their son or daughter will get into the car after the game, and the first question they ask him will be like, "Well, why the fuck did you swing at that pitch? I bought you a brand new bat. We did lessons all week. Why didn't you swing at that pitch?"
Mhm,
And that only then reinforces the fact that this kid's sole identity is based on how they perform on the field. Now, again,
mhm.
no shade against parents. There's a lot going on. I'm a new parent right now. It's a lot, it's a lot of stuff, you know? But it would behoove people to understand these little things right here. And what I tell all my parents that coach kids on my teams is like, the second your kid comes in the car or the second you come in contact with the kid, you should say nothing other than, dude, I loved watching you play today. That's it.
Mhm,
Conversation's done. And that person will then feel maybe 10, 15 minutes later, will be like, hey, can we talk about the game a little bit? Because they
mhm.
feel fine. They know that you loved watching them play no matter what. They might have struck out 4 fucking times and looked embarrassed themselves
Right,
on the field, which I've
right.
done zillions of times. It's not fun.
Yeah,
But my mom and dad were always there to love and support me. And then we talked about the game. And then
yep,
sometimes I wanted to go hit extra, or sometimes I wanted to go home and get some ice cream, or maybe I wanted to go watch some wrestling when I got home. But like the conversation was there, and I knew my value or the love they had for me wasn't determined by just how I performed on the field. Thank God I have the parents I had. Like, God bless them. They're amazing to
yep.
this very day. And so, yeah, I think that's important. Anyways,
No shade on the parents, you're right, but I can't tell you how many kids we have that come through our clinics. We do thousands and thousands of sessions every month, and the car ride home, just as you describe it, Aaron, you're talking about this thing that maybe you've heard in practices. I'm saying we've had kids sit in therapy who are anxious messes
because of
who
that.
go back to the car ride home,
Mm,
whose parents are ultimately it's playing into the outcome based life. Like, and those parents in some ways are kind of playing out their own desires and wishes for for their kids. Like they
sure.
want their kid to perform well so bad that they can't let go of the fact that the kid didn't swing at the first pitch. I like I like the research on the flow state. I'm sure as an athlete you've looked at that. You probably talked about it on this podcast a million times, but I love guys like uh, Kobe Bryant or LeBron James or Michael Jordan, of course. These guys that couldn't miss. I remember when Michael Jordan was making his run for the first championship that he won. They were behind. I thought, man, they're going to lose again. This sucks. Phil Jackson calls a timeout. and they came out a different team. I think they were playing the Trailblazers or the Timberwolves. They come out a different team. It's that game where Jordan shot like 6 3-pointers in one quarter. He's that famous picture where his hands are like this, his tongue is out. And I remember for the first time I heard an announcer say, Jordan can't miss. He's in the zone. And I had no idea what the zone was. It didn't mean anything to me, but I was like, yeah, he's in the zone. That's awesome. I didn't know that later on when I would get my psychology training that the zone was a psychological principle that psychologists had been studying for decades at that point about high performing athletes that get in a flow state where they just can't lose. And those athletes have an obsession with the process and they completely surrender outcomes. Like when Jordan let go of a basketball, he knew exactly how that ball was supposed to feel when it came off his fingertip, right? He believed every shot that came out of his hand was going in a basket, right?
Oh yeah.
That's
Oh
just
yeah.
his mentality. He wasn't worried about an outcome. He was worried about the micro movements that would ultimately lead to success. And those same psychologists started to recognize, wait, this isn't just athletes. This is high performing composers and artists and engineers and CEOs and sales guys. They all have this incredible ability to focus on the process. What's happening right here, right now? What's the next healthy thing I need to do right here, right now? And they all completely surrender outcomes. Those are the people that in our culture it's almost like a cheat code for capitalism because man, if that's your mentality, you can win. You can win because all you do, think about business, business guy files bankruptcy. The great business guys who file bankruptcy, guess what they do? Start another business. Like you learn from it, right? Oh, okay. Next time, don't over leverage myself. Got it. Let's go. And those guys are the ones that end up doing the best in business when you can completely surrender an outcome and focus on the process. So when what you're saying about parents driving home with their kids in a car, man, the idea is, dude, incredible effort. I I know this didn't go well. I know this is your favorite game. I just want you to know I saw your effort. I saw your heart, and that's what I care about, man. Good game. Loved
Mhm.
watching you play. Totally different process.
Yep. Yeah, the flow state is a beautiful thing. When I actually learned what it was, then I was like, "Oh, that's what I felt when the baseball looked like a beach ball and I was just like rocking and rolling." And I think the most important thing I learned about the flow state is that you can only get into it from a positive state of mind because you can have sort of you call it like you can call it like the no mind zone, right? You have a negative
Yeah.
mind, positive mind, and a no mind. You can't jump from a negative mind into the flow state. It doesn't work like that. And so when kids
Mhm.
start to learn that the only way they're really going to perform at their very best is if, because we have harsh self talk. All of us do. Sometimes we motherfuck ourselves. Sometimes we talk down to ourselves, right? And we want to challenge that self talk. But like, if we can, for the most part, be encouraging to ourselves and say things that are going to get us into the zone and like okay that framework works for me because then I can use that positive mind to hopefully get into the flow state and so when kids start to learn that, at least the athletes that I talk to, like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, I want to sort of challenge these negative thoughts. They're not really true. I want to say some true stuff, and then that'll hopefully get me to a
Mhm.
flow state where I feel like I'm in the zone. And so when I learned that made a lot of sense to me. It's like, well, how come I can't get in the flow state if I keep mother effing myself? Like, let's go, fuck,
Yeah.
god damn it, why can't it doesn't work like
Yeah.
that. And it's like, okay, because there's a pathway and it works for the same everyday people. Like you want to get into a flow
Mhm.
state when you're on a sales call or you're being a parent or you're with your kid or whatever the case may be. It's like, okay, well, all right, what's the encouraging sort of language I can use? You're saying be in the present moment, be exactly where my feet are. Okay, I love doing this. I'm in tune. Okay, cool. Then it starts to sort of the magic starts to happen, and then you feel like Michael Jordan in his flu game or whatever. Maybe you don't feel
Yeah.
like you have a sickness, but
Dude, I love that you're using all this research in sports. We need more people that are going to educate themselves and understand how to help kids perform the best they possibly can and enjoy it. I think that so sad when they don't enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, that's why I encourage everyone to do a podcast, Dr. Mike, because then you could just bring people on and you could be the stupidest person in the room. And then over fucking 5.5 years, you
You're
get like
learning
a
all
little
of
bit
it, right?
smarter. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
You get a little
awesome,
bit
man.
smarter. Yeah, it's great. And then you try to apply it into your life. Like that's really the whole point is like, There's this guy online, Chris Williamson, who has a great podcast that I admire, and he talks about doing the thing. And it's like, we'll read about doing the thing, we'll think about doing the thing, we'll write about doing the thing, we'll listen to someone else think about doing the thing, and then we'll think about doing the thing, and then we'll think about it's like, dude, you got to do the fucking thing. That's the only way.
Yeah.
It's the only way. You got to
Yep.
do the thing over and over and over and over and over again, and then eventually you figure it out. And that's the beautiful part also about being human, and going back to Viktor Frankl and learning how to choose your response, and like all of these magnificent things we have, and we feel this range of emotions that come through from trying and not getting and having a setback, and then learning from the setback and the light bulb going off. It's like, man, I want all of that. I want all of those
Hmm.
cool emotions that come through, and I want to feel sad when I don't get something that I love, and like, how does that make me feel? And if I lose someone I love, I want to feel that grief because I knew I lost them and loved them, and like all these things. It's like it's such a beautiful journey, but we're so like sort of averse to it. And then when we do maybe feel that feeling, like you were saying, we have to label it, and now we identify it, and now it's just like this whole it's our whole personality. It's the same thing in sports. Like, I don't only want to be a baseball player. I'd
Hmm.
like that. It's a part of me. But I'm also not only depressed. I'm much more than that. And there's much more that goes into it. And I think, as I told you before, I relate everything to sports, and I think they all fall into each other, but it's just the only way my brain works. But I think it makes sense for, the person who is needing this information and wants to apply it to their life and all those great things.
Yep. Now, I think sports it's such a great metaphor for life because if you take the example you gave about a batter, but then put that in the context of like a dating relationship, so you got a guy that's going out with a girl for the first date. And if you over monitor and overthink and over criticize and your first joke doesn't hit, and you're all of a sudden, man, you're not even there anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're not
Yeah.
present anymore at all. You're thinking about why I suck and maybe I'm not even good enough. And I over punted my coverage with this girl anyway. She's way too good looking for me. All these negative thoughts start to come into your mind. And before you know it, your brain is kind of clicked into that other mode, that negative mode you called it. I call it the fear state. And it's just a impossible state to be able to function in a way that helps us thrive. We can't thrive when we're constantly scared about what happens next. If you live in the moment, let's take the metaphor of a date, and you just say, "You know what? I'm just going to listen to this girl. I'm going to try to
Mm.
understand her. Maybe that was a stupid comment I made, but I'm just going to be present and I'm trying to understand her." And guess what? Most girls love that. Love it. They think you're the greatest guy in the world and they want more dates, but that only happens when you allow yourself to silence the inner critic, calm your brain and your body down, and actually just be present with people.
Mm. Do you see a lot of young men, or just men in general, in your clinic?
I see a lot of young men personally. I am in the unique position where I get to kind of choose who I take on. Now we've got
Mm.
40 something clinicians at our Live Well clinics in Central Florida. So, you know, I choose to work with 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old guys. That's kinda it's really fun for me. There's a lot of hope
Yeah.
there. So I'm guessing that's a big piece of the puzzle for you, right? You're interacting with a lot of young guys that are playing baseball and trying to get better.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of the people that listen to this show, young men who want to improve their life. Like, if they're listening to this show, they're trying to be better. They're trying to be their
Mm,
best version of themselves. And I think that's
yeah.
important. So, I mean, I know this is very general, obviously, because, the way you work with someone is very specific to their life and the things they've gone through. But is there any
Yeah.
sort of general things that you've learned that someone could maybe try and apply to their life?
From young men in particular,
Yes.
yeah, I would say there's a belief for us as men. And I think we get this from our dads and we pass it down generation to generation to generation. And the belief is that somehow feeling anything is not masculine and maybe feminine, maybe like
Mm.
like that's just not what men do. And what that does is it creates a tremendous amount of repression. Like most young guys are super repressed. So they'll come in the office and they'll be like, "How you doing today, man? What's going on?" "Fine."
Mm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, you had a big test last week. How did that go? Good. Like they have no ability to sort of access what's actually going on inside of them, and their life has become about performing for people, right? It's performative. I am going back to I'm as good as my last win or loss, or, I've got to wear this mask and I've got to be resilient and I've got to always be on and I can't ever let them see vulnerability or I can't let anybody kind of see parts of me that maybe I don't feel good about. But the problem is part of being an 18-year-old guy is questioning value and questioning worth because you don't really know. You're building that at 18 and 19, you're building a value system. So to think that you're going to just fly through adolescence and your early adulthood without ever having like that thought that am I enough? Am I what I need to be? Are people going to reject me? That's unrealistic, man. Everybody has those kind of thoughts. That's part of being human. And so
Mhm.
if there's anything I've learned working with these young guys over the years, it's that the guys that get healthy, the guys that end up going out and doing great in business, these are the guys that start their businesses, they make money quickly. These are the guys that get girls that are like the kind of girl you want to be with. Those guys that get like those girls, they're usually the guys that have the capacity and willingness to just have some understanding of what's going on inside of them. And most guys push down their emotions. So it's like a ball into the water. So you take a beach ball, you put it under the water in a pool, right? Then you take
Mhm.
another beach ball, you put it under the water. Then you suppress another emotion and suppress another emotion. Before you know it, you've got 13 beach balls under the water. It takes every bit of energy. You've got every muscle in your body's contracted, right? Just trying to keep everything suppressed. And then it's one little ripple that comes along, one little statement. Somebody says one thing, and what happens? Those balls don't float gently above the surface. They, boom, they just explode. And a lot of guys, if they feel an emotion, it is explosion, So
Mhm.
they go from numb and sort of emotionless to absolutely aggressive and angry. And there's not much in between. And that usually ends up causing problems for them because the older you get, like if you're a young guy watching this right now, the older you get, the less people are going to deal with that. I'm going to tell you that right now. Like when you're 21 years old and you're blowing up and people just don't respond well to that. Like they expect someone to have maturity, emotional regulation, like know how to handle their crap, right? So
Mhm.
that's what I would say to young guys that are watching, that if you really want to be a high calibration peak performer, you want to live the best life you can possibly live, try to figure out how to just be honest with yourself about what's going on inside of you and recognize
Yeah.
that doesn't make you feminine. It doesn't make you a pansy. Like basically that makes you a human, which
Yeah.
helps you relate to other humans.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it is like society has rewarded sort of the stoic man.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that has value in certain aspects, but I think from an outsider's perspective, we obviously don't know what that stoic man is actually feeling on the inside. If he does express emotion, where does he get vulnerable at certain moments? And so we see just a guy who's like sort of stone faced all the time, and we feel like this is how they deal with life and no matter what. And it's like that's just not how it works. I mean, I think about masculinity as this idea of being a warrior poet. Um,
Hmm.
and you definitely have to learn how to be a poet if you want to be with a woman for the rest of your life, because you have to be able to write vows and express love and show beauty. And then a kid
Hmm.
comes into your life and then you're like, oh my God, I've never known love like this. And you have to be able to talk about it and show it and feel it. And there's nothing better in the whole world. But you also have to be able to have that warrior side. Like I need to
Yeah.
protect and provide for my family. I need to become a fucking monster by working out. And I also
Hmm.
need to figure out my shit. And I also need to be able to tell my wife that I love her. I'm feeling a little rejected or distant and I don't feel as appreciated by her or whatever the case may be. These are all just beautiful aspects of becoming that person. And you only figure that out by trying and falling down, getting rejected and getting
Yeah.
back up and learning from this and learning from that and studying other great men and talking to them and having mentors and all these brilliant things that might be available to you. So yeah, anyways.
Aaron, I want to make sure I clarify something. I'm glad you said what you just said about being a warrior because I don't want anyone to misunderstand the idea of what it means to be aware of emotion, you better have some piss and vinegar in you if you're a young man in this world,
Yeah.
right? You need
Hmm.
some piss and vinegar that allows you to respond to injustice, especially. Like we need guys that are willing to stand up to say, okay, I'm not going to be content to just let things I'm going to be a warrior. I'm going to fight for what's true. I'm going to fight for my family. I'm going to fight for my girlfriend, whatever opportunity I have to stand for goodness. That's what I'm doing.
Hmm.
But when you're aware of your emotion, all I'm saying is your emotions down there anyways. So if you had something that's a disappointment, to be able to admit to yourself, I'm disappointed.
Hmm.
I wish I had gotten the girl, made the team, gotten the job. That allows you to learn from situations. It allows you to know yourself. It allows you to make sure that you're not just acting out of that disappointment and aggression in ways that don't even make sense. So when I say be aware of your emotion, I'm not saying be controlled by emotion. I'm actually saying the opposite. When you suppress emotion, it has all the power.
Hmm.
When you understand your emotion, that's what gives you power over it. I like in no way, shape, or form am I recommending like people with no emotional regulation. I'm just so sad or I'm just so anxious. That's actually the opposite, right? I'm saying know yourself. Be willing to be honest with yourself about you because that's the very thing that gives you the capability of controlling the process and demonstrating emotional regulation. The data bears this out. So even if you think about people that are high performers at work, so what you have leaders at Fortune 500 companies, right? Like thousands of leaders at a place like Bank of America. What makes the difference between all those people that start out as investment bankers for Bank of America and the ones that sort of move their way up to become vice presidents and senior vice presidents and CEOs? It is clear the guys that do better in business, they have the same business acumen of everybody else that stayed in that flat part of the structure. The guys that move up have what we call high emotional intelligence. So they have high
Hmm.
IQ, but they have high emotional IQ. What that means is they just have the ability to read themselves and read the room. Like I understand that this person that I'm leading over here is super stressed about not meeting their goals. I'm not going to just yell at them and send them out of my room. I'm going to recognize it. That gets a coachable moment because I know they're stressed because I read the room. And when I know they're stressed, I can give them honest feedback. And when I give them honest feedback, I can send them out with an action plan to help them meet their goals next time. That's why people move up in organizations. That's why people become awesome leaders is because they have an awareness of emotion, not because emotion controls them, but because they control it and they regulate it.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Let's touch on stress a little bit. I know you have a book. You have a book called Stress Relief for Life. I'm sure you talk to people about stress all the time because
All the
everyone
time.
seems to be more stressed than ever before. Do you think that's actually true? People are more stressed than ever before, or do you think we lost sort of the tools to be able to manage the stress, or they never taught along the way, or what's your
Yeah,
what's your
no,
diagnosis there?
Aaron, unfortunately, man, I do think we are more stressed objectively. And some of that is connected to the way we live our life. So I think about someone, yeah, 250 years ago, 300 years ago. If they had a meeting, they would get out on the road and maybe like walk a mile and a half, sun's on their face, wind in their hair, out in nature, then they have an intense meeting doing whatever they're doing, right? Negotiating, selling whatever they're going to sell. And then after the work, they get back and they walk back. Sun's in their face, wind's in their hair. So they're like, there's this cadence of heavy, heavy workload and like things that nurture us and build us up and refresh us and heavy work and refreshment. And we just don't do that in our life right now. The way we live is we are completely always bombarded with
Mhm.
more information than we could ever consume. Like think about the internet and social media and especially AI now, there's so much data coming at us that it literally impacts our brains from the time we're really, really young. That's why these parents that say they're not going to give their kids iPads or phones, at 5 years old are brilliant because they're teaching their kids how to be bored. That's where creativity happens. They're teaching their kids how to tolerate, sort of like a calm experience. Most people don't get that anymore. Most people, from the time they're very, very young, they're just poking around with technology, and that activates that amygdala in the back of your brain, that fear threat mode. And it does shut our frontal lobe down. That's why when you look at data right now, even on AI users, people that are using AI consistently, their frontal lobe activity is much lower than people that aren't using AI consistently. So it's
Mm.
wild, man, when you look at how we live. Years ago, they kind of they had this life that built in rest and relaxation with heavy work. Now it's just constant bombardment with things that put our brain and shift our brain into this mode to where we can't even fully process or think anymore. So that stress that everyone seems to be experiencing is a result of the way we live, the pace and cadence of our life, combined with the constant drain of technology.
Mm. This is going to sound weird when I say this, but have you seen people? This trend is called raw dogging. Again,
What does
understand.
raw dogging mean?
Not
I
in a
mean, I know.
sexual term,
Yeah, I was about to say, I
but
think I know what raw dogging mean, but
so basically people are like seeing how long they can go without anything. They're just raw dogging it. So they're just sitting in their house for 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. They're calling it raw dog.
yeah.
And like, I mean, that trend is now happening because people are actually feeling, like literally feeling what it's doing to them. And now
Mhm.
people are doing it on planes and on flights. And like, there's this girl that I saw today. She just sat in her house for 40 minutes and she filmed it. So I guess she wasn't totally raw dogging it, but she didn't
Yeah.
do anything. And that's called just like being bored, taking some deep breaths, having a meditation, like all these skills. Now it's like got a new different name. I don't really love the term raw dog because I got,
I was
can't
wondering where
even,
you were going with that, Aaron.
I couldn't even frame the fucking question to you because I sound like a weirdo. But but like, so you can see that people are actually feeling what you're saying in like a very, very serious way, that they're trying to
Yeah.
do anything they can to sort of figure it out.
So, honestly, what we're trying to do, mostly what we're trying to do is just get away from ourselves. Like we just can't, we've got so much access to people, so much access to content, so much access to, videos that we don't even know how to actually even be by ourselves anymore. So
Mm,
you want to have fun? Go to Starbucks, sit in a chair, do not pick your phone up, and watch anyone there that's drinking a coffee by themselves. I will bet you $1,000 that the majority of people in Starbucks have their little phone up, they're sipping their coffee, and they're just scrolling away because we literally don't even wait for people anymore without occupying our mind with that stimulation. And the constant stimulation is what the brain perceives as a risk. It perceives it as a threat. It's like constant. I mean, think about, some caveman who was constantly under stress. They didn't live like that, right? They would get in caves and protect themselves, and they could just let their guard down. And we metaphorically never have our guard down. We're
mm,
constantly being bombarded. I think it's funny that people are raw dogging like that. That's hilarious because it it I'm sure makes people very, very nervous. They
mm,
did some studies on this a few years ago. They took phones away from college students for like 24 hours, and this college students started to experience symptoms that were very similar to anxiety and depression, like in 24 hours without their technology. It's pretty crazy.
mm. Yeah. Wow. You mentioned AI. Do you think that
It's
AI
the end of the world.
will?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. We fucking need Arnold Schwarzenegger to come back and save us. So let's go, Terminator. Uh, But I've seen a lot of this AI stuff now being implemented in sort of the mental health field. What do you think about that before we talk about your app and what you guys have developed there? But I've just it just doesn't. I don't know. Go ahead and then maybe I'll share my thoughts.
I think just like any technology, it can be good or bad depending on how we use it. I think it's a really bad idea that people turn to AI as virtual therapists, and that's the only access they have to feedback and information and coping skills. It's just really not smart, right? And we've seen that in the news. I mean, people have taken recommendations and advice from AI and made some super poor choices. Some people, I mean, there's even reports of people that commit suicide because they manipulate AI into teaching them how to do it. So it can be devastatingly awful, but it can also be really helpful for some people. So, for instance, in our Live Well coaching platform, we have a custom AI product there that's taught on Live Well content. So, if you're on our Live Well coaching platform and you have access to all of our information and we're teaching stuff and you're doing challenges and you're getting our daily information, and then you can go to our AI chatbot and you can ask it questions and it'll answer first with Live Well content. That makes a bunch of sense to me, right? Because people can go as deep as they want to go to get coping skills and understand how to, man, how do I really find emotional intelligence? Let me look into this. And I heard Mike talk about this, and he taught on this on Live Well Coaching. But now I'm going to ask the Live Well Coaching app and some specific questions, and it'll answer like Mike would answer, and it does. It's kind of crazy, Aaron. I've tested it out, and I'm talking to it. And I ask it for a question, and it answers with something like some article I wrote 5 years ago. I'm like, oh my gosh, that like I remember writing that. That's actually me. So, like in that regard, I think it can be super helpful. And the research is bearing that out too. Like I think that Dartmouth came out with a study that people that interacted with a AI chatbot that was monitored. This was not like just they went on and asked about how to deal with their borderline personality disorder. It's not that. It's like people that in a very directed way interacted with this AI chatbot surrounding cognitive behavioral coping skills, which those are very validated outcome based coping skills. They saw a decrease in depression and anxiety similar to people that are involved in one on one therapy. So you can get some benefit from it, but it's like we can't do it in isolation. If there's chatbots involved, it has to be surrounded by a group of professionals that are monitoring it, that are training the model to make sure that it responds in ways that are consistent with some clinicians' value system about how people get better.
Mm. Yeah, it sounds like it should be implemented the same way I think medication should be implemented. At first, you're not telling the person to eat, move, sleep well as best they possibly can. If you haven't prescribed those things first, and then that doesn't work or that doesn't help, then medication could definitely be a factor there. Medication was very beneficial to my sister and I think extended her life.
Definitely.
But she did all the other stuff first. And I think that's the same way you're approaching this sort of AI thing is like, okay, can we get you with a real person with real skills and real coaching and real this and all of that? And then we have this sort of conglomeration of things. And then, okay, then if you have a few more questions, AI might be helpful because you have sort of the foundational layers that might be helping you. If I'm getting
Hmm.
that right.
No, that's good, man. That's exactly right.
Um, Dr. Mike, is there anything else you want to add that maybe I didn't ask you or you want to mention here before we jet off into the sunset?
Man, I just want to tell people quickly about our Live Well coaching platform just so that they can
Hmm.
have a better understanding of what it is. This is Aaron been my this has been my passion for about the past 4 years. Because one thing that's clear for me is there's so much brokenness coming at us with mental health issues that there's no way the field is going to respond. And my real goal is to stop problems before they start. Right? Like,
Mm.
that's one reason I'm talking to you right now, because if we can take an hour and we can just talk about issues, man, maybe somebody could hear something today that could just help right the ship a little bit and stop a problem before it ever gets to a point where they need clinical attention. That's my heart. I love the idea of that. So I've worked for years to build a library of online on demand courses. So if you join our Live Well coaching subscription, You can go on there and you have access to courses on depression, anxiety, stress, emotional intelligence, things like that. And these are kind of more in depth courses that help people develop real coping skills. I did one on stress relief for life based on my book. And it's literally like, Aaron, what I would do with someone for 12 sessions of counseling if they were stressed out. And it's broken up into days, and you get every session is another day. And they can get all the cognitive behavioral skills they need for like stress management. So we have all those courses. And then every month we do a challenge with the whole Live Well coaching community. So we pick one thing a month. Like right now, we're doing a gratitude challenge, and you get a 5-minute, 10-minute video drop to you every day. It's something inspiring, quick and dirty. And then you go into the platform, and it has right underneath that video, here's your challenge for today. Do this one thing different. Do one thing different today. And then you add that up over about 14 days, and people can start to see a difference. So they can work with us and walk with us every month on a different strategy. I think over the holidays, we're going to be talking about how you deal with family members over the holidays and the stress of that. In January, we're going to talk about a reset for the mindset. So, that challenge, that's quick and dirty every day. That's part of the subscription. Then you get our chat bot. That's a part of it. And then if you want to kind of level up from that, then you can get a real live coach that is a clinician. They're on our clinical team. These people are they're smart people. It's not therapy, but you'll meet with them virtually about twice a month, and they'll help you build a wellness plan that will allow you to get healthy, stay healthy, and live well. So, the plan might be, I'm going to run this month. I'm going to eat better. Here's how I'm going to eat better. They're going to help you create that plan. They're going to help you find some piece of content that you can connect to on the platform. Hey, this month I'm going to be doing that stress relief course with Dr. Mike, and I'm going to be doing the challenge. And then they check in with you. It's just a real person on the other end of the technology that helps you walk through it and gives you that personal accountability, affirmation, and just a sense that you're not alone in the process. So I'd love anybody that is watching this, if you want to check that out. I think you guys will be able to put that up in the comments or something, Aaron, or it's livewell-coaching.com. You can get to the platform.
Yeah. Just linked in the show notes below. So easy to access right there. And yeah, that's amazing. If we can get to a world like you're trying to build where we are proactive instead of reactive, oh man, what a fucking vibe that would be.
Dude, you're right. That's the goal.
So, man, Dr. Mike, I'm pumped to know you now, dude. Thank you. Happy that you exist in the world. Glad we got connected. Hope everyone on the fucking planet uses your coaching app. Sounds amazing. I can't wait to check it out and share with everyone how I'm finding it. So, sounds awesome.
Aaron, thanks, man. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click right here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But most importantly, above all else, please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.